Olsen brings us beautiful
It was hard
plants.
for me to put that on the table, to be honest with you.
And I'm surprised you even have something like this around. Did you purposely do this?
I purposely let it dry out. Yes.
Well, this is what a lot of us have now because we haven't had enough rain. We've really got to pay attention to our plants.
And there's a lot of things that you can do to prevent heat stress. And the number one thing you can do to prevent heat stress is preventive maintenance, which means if you take care of your plants during the other growing seasons, water, fertilizing, making them stronger, they're going to be more durable when the heat comes.
Okay. And
you have less problems. And of course, the other one is to water.
Right.
The problem with water is, when do you water? You know, I water I have a sprinkler system and I water every day. Now, some zones, you have to put longer.
Yeah.
So you have to know your yard with that. And so my flowers, I water every day, like my seasonal color, my perennials, because they're shallow rooted. And remember, even though you water with the sprinkler system, you're only watering a couple inches of the soil. So established landscape trees and stuff are going to suffer because they can't get enough water.
Gotcha.
So then you have to get your old hose and you water your trees. You soak them at least once a week. If you soak your trees really well, that means let the water run for at least 5 to 10 minutes per tree.
Okay.
They won't shed so many leaves and they'll be much stronger with that.
All right.
So that's important. And mulch is the number one thing you can do. If you remulch your flower beds with 3 to 4 inches of mulch each and every year, what that does, that first of all, it contains the water. So when you're watering, deep water, it doesn't roll off.
Okay.
It holds it in place.
Holds it in place and holds the moisture?
Yes, it holds the moisture and makes a huge difference. Even your trees, if you do tree rings, especially newly planted trees, like at my farm, I have mulch around my trees and I soak them. I wait about 3 to 5 minutes per tree, once a week. And my trees, even though they're in the middle of a hay field with the beaming heat, still look beautiful because they haven't stressed at all. So that's important. And another thing is, don't prune right now or relocate plants right now.
It's just too hot.
Right. When you prune, what do? You're forcing the plant to put out new growth. Well, if it's putting out new growth, it's expending more water. It needs more water.
More energy, more water.
Yeah, so you want to just let them lay low for a while until we start to cool down. And if you do all these different steps, then you should have success with your landscape.
And certain times of the day are better to water?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. That's a debate on that.
Okay.
I water first thing in the morning, so 3 a.m. my sprinkler goes off. So by 7 a.m. my sprinkler is off and done.
Okay.
And the reason why you do that, if you water during the afternoon, you have evaporation.
Right.
You lose probably half of the water you just applied.
Okay.
So you want to do it in the morning, and if you do it at night too, then the foliage stays wet and you have fungus and disease.
Right.
So early morning is when you want to start to water.
Okay. That's important. And are there some plants that you don't really have to worry about, or is everything just needing water right now?
Well, there are, we have what we call drought-tolerant plants, which are like yuccas, cacti. Well, I mean, we have winter-hardy sedums and things that you can plant in your garden. But even those, this time of year, if you do not water, are going to stress. They may survive, but they're not going to look too good. So yeah, plant selection is important as well. And another thing is, this time of year too, you don't really want to fertilize either, because then you're forcing them to grow, again, expending more energy and needing more water.
Even some of our potted plants on the porches or in the covered areas in the shade are just getting really hot right now too, so that can be dangerous for those plants,
think about it. Yeah, especially with plants when they're out in the sun in pots, the roots are hot because the sun's hitting that. So I water every day.
Yeah.
Every day I soak them, and they're gonna, even though you're watering every day, they're still gonna stress. It's just so hot outside.
Right.
So don't be alarmed. They're not gonna look 100% perfect, but when we have cooler nights, eventually they'll bounce out of it.
There you go. Well, they'll bounce out of it, but you got to make sure that you're taking care of them.
But there are no guarantees.
We need some water for sure.
We're either going to water too much or not enough.
It's a hard call.
Listen,
so,
this is how I kill all of my plants. I don't know if I'm doing it too much, and I get worried about that, drowning my plants.
Well, and, the thing is, if you overwater, plants usually never come back because the roots are suffocated. Once they start to suffocate, they don't come back. Now, if they dry out, I mean, not like you didn't water in 10 days, but if they dry out, they usually can come back. So you might as well err on the dry side than the wet side.
There's a hole in the bottom of this pot.
Well,
so
that's important for drainage, and we have a little bit of a list of tips when it comes to watering, because it can be very complicated. So I can't read it from here. So.
You have it memorized, right?
Well, I'll go over a punch list. Okay, first thing is you got to look at like sun or shade. If it's a hot area, I know that seems obvious to most, but it's not. You need to water more often. You were talking about your container.
Right.
If it gets a lot of sun, right now I'm watering my outside pots about every other day. plants tell you what they need.
Oh,
They
I
don't
need,
tell
I
me
just need to
anything.
listen. I
They
just
do.
need to listen.
If they start getting light in color in their foliage, that's usually mean they're drying out a little bit too much. And if you water them and you water them really good, if they're still dry, I mean they're still wilting, and you keep watering and they're still wilting, it is overwatered. So let a plant tell you what it wants. So right now I water my pots in the sun every other day. In the summertime, because if you have small pots, as a plant roots out, it takes all the moisture because there's no soil left, really, basically. So I have to water it every day. And remember, when you're watering your containers every day, what do? You leach out all the nutrients. That's why you want to fertilize them. Now, in your yard, that's a whole different situation. Some of us have really good drainage. Some of us have very heavy clay, which most of us do, and our flower beds tend to hold water. So you got to be careful with that. So people say, do you water in the day? Do you water at night? I water first thing in the morning. My sprinkler system, I have an automatic sprinkler system, goes on at 3 a.m. And it cycles through to about 8 a.m. So that is, it kind of dries out during the day, and I don't have a fungus and that type of problem. And right now I water every other day my yard because it's packed full of plants and sun. Now I have other areas that stay wetter and shady, and even though they come on every other day, I might water those for only 2 minutes.
Right.
But my sun areas, I might water for 10 minutes. So you have to kind of, I know it's complicated.
This is such
I
a
need
science.
to take.
Well, it's just let your plants tell you what. Go out there, and if it's real wet, then you know you don't have to water every other day if it stays real wet. If it dries out, then you have to water more often.
Mine is the potted plants. That's what I really have a problem with.
The key thing with pots is routine watering. So don't just, when you remember, put yourself on a schedule or your kid on a schedule or such. So if it's every other day, then you make sure every other day you water. Maybe in the first thing in the morning you grab your coffee and you water.
Right.
Because you know that you have a routine.
Chris H. Olsen, you've been with us all morning. Everybody who's watched our show knows that you're the green thumb of all green thumbs.
I love plants, that's for sure.
All right, so give us a little bit of help on something we can do to spruce up our gardens.
Well, I call this segment tropical perennials because these plants, tropical necessarily are not winter hardy plants, but these look tropical but are winter hardy, which means they come back every single year, and that's what you want. So the first one are, people love hibiscus.
Yeah.
Now we do have the tropical hibiscus, which you buy in spring, you put them out in the first freeze, they die. These hardy hibiscus come in all different colors, anywhere from a white to a blush to a fuchsia pink to red. And what's great about a lot of these is they have red foliage.
Okay.
So the more sun they get, the darker the foliage is. So it's not just about the flowers. Now, believe it or not, these blossoms only last one day. So when they're done blooming,
No kidding.
yeah, they'll drop off. You'll have it on the ground the next day, so just beware if you have them in pots by a pool or on concrete, they're going to drop
You're
the
gonna deal with
flowers.
that.
So they're better in flower beds. Now the great thing about these is they're fast growers and they constantly are blooming all summer long. Plus they have a bohemian type of look to it.
Bohemian. Okay.
I was wrong myself, so I understand. So you can grow these. Now the disadvantage to having these hibiscus is bugs love them. Like mine at home right now have little holes all over it because I didn't pre-maintenance. I didn't spray them when they first flushed out to keep them clean.
Gotcha.
But now I am. So just beware that you can have little caterpillars, grasshoppers and such. So you want to use something like Triple Action Plus. We've talked about this before. It's insecticide, a miticide, and a fungicide. So I spray mine about every 10 days or every 2 weeks just to keep them clean.
So that's a topical thing that you're spraying over the leaves.
Yep.
I got you.
And the plant does not absorb the poison, so you can even use Triple Action Plus on edibles.
Okay.
Then, of course, I love to mix in elephant ears because they have a great tropical look. Majority of the elephant ears are winter hardy here in Arkansas, except for if we have an Arctic blast like we had, we could have lost some of those.
We lost several things in my house.
Several things. And then I also brought the banana. This is a winter hardy banana. I don't know if there's such thing as reincarnation, but if there is, I lived during the caveman times with the big, huge plants and leaves. I love broadleaf plants. But this is a great banana, the hardy banana. It has a little bit of red in the foliage, and it actually does produce fruit, believe it or not.
Really?
And it's a really sweet kind of apple flavor taste to it.
No kidding.
Now, if you mix and match all these together in your garden, you will have yourself a tropical paradise.
And what is this also?
That is a dinner plate hibiscus, but that one comes in with the red, dark red color, which is one of my favorite colors.
Yeah.
I mix the colors. I usually do a red, a white, and a pink together in one spot, and they look great.
Hey, so I know you love this BR61,
yes,
right?
Yes.
This is
this is a fertilizer. So the middle number is what we call phosphorus. Phosphorus is the blooming power part of the fertilizer. Feed that every 2 or 3 weeks, boom. Great.
Did you just turn the sprinklers on in this
I think
garden?
Well, you know, it's so hot. I'm doing the extra one, but it adds to the ambiance, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's steamy out here, boy.
It's steamy, I tell you.
We're going to talk about Japanese maples today. My mom has a beautiful Japanese maple that she's so proud of in her front yard, and you have a couple.
I have 2 of them, and they're my favorite trees.
Are they beautiful?
I love them. I didn't know we were supposed to do anything to them, though.
Well,
Yeah,
you know,
we need
Japanese
to know
maples
what to
are the #1 ornamental, which means a smaller size tree, sold in America.
Really?
Now, they're not the cheapest. So we're going to talk about first why, because everyone's, why do I have to spend so much? Because Japanese maples do not grow easily from seed. Some do, like the green variety, which is an old-fashioned variety, seeds everywhere in your yard. But like the blood goods, the crimson queen, they only grow by grafting. And you know what grafting is?
No.
If you look at this trunk, see how thick it is at the bottom? It's taking 2 plants and merging them together.
Yeah.
And that is the main way they propagate Japanese maples, which adds to the cost, and that's why they're more expensive.
Well, they have cool names.
They're cool names, and they're usually the specimen tree, so you only need one. But when I landscape, like when I do the Crimson Queen, this is variety. It looks very soft. It weeps. It doesn't get huge. I'll do 3 of them together to make a massive grouping.
Yeah.
Then you have the Blood Good, which is everyone's favorite. This is the one that stays burgundy all summer long. Some burgundy varieties will fade. And then this one is called Shanna. Shanna only gets 8 foot tall, but 10 foot wide.
Oh,
so if
okay.
you want a beautiful kind of contorted tree, it is really, really beautiful.
So it just depends on where you're putting it.
Where you're putting it. Now remember, they can take full sun, but in the heat of summer, like this week, you will find that the leaves will scorch. It does not mean the tree's going to die, but they will scorch. But there are pros and cons we need to talk about.
Okay.
First, we got to talk about, let's talk the pros. So they come in many colors. You know, different green, different
small,
fall, big,
wide.
small, like we talked about. Of course, they also have the ornamental in size. They are a moderate rate, so they grow a good rate, but not too fast. So they're not going to take over a space too quickly. They're very easy to care for, and believe it or not that you're probably going to do this, but you actually make maple syrup from Japanese maples.
Nuh-uh.
I'm just letting you. You might be able to
I'll
do
be
this.
tapping into that sucker tonight.
Your neighbor's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, we're having pancakes tomorrow.
And there are cons. They do have soft wood, so if we have ice storms and winds, that could break them. Know that. The roots can crack sidewalks, so you usually want to plant them away from sidewalks. All maples are like that. So they're very shallow roots. So if you're going to plant them in the lawn, you might be hard to mow over them. Although Japanese maples do better in flower beds or big mulch rings. They do not like to be weed-eated around.
Right.
And they are kind of susceptible to certain pests like beetles and such. So you do want to watch out for that in blight or a fungus can attack.
So you brought a little
This is
first
when you
aid
plant
here?
them. When you plant Japanese maples, the key thing is, you know the root ball? I plant mine about 1 inch higher than the soil level. They do not like to be planted deep.
Okay.
And then I use root stimulator, which is a hormone. It heals the roots, and they really helps in any tree or shrub.
Can I drink this?
Yeah.
My hormones a little crazy.
Good luck. But if you use that and give them plenty of consistent watering, they do not like to get watered and then go through a major dry spell. They will shed their leaves, so you want to water them consistently a couple times a week.
All right.
Is
Yeah,
it an okay
great.
time to plant these right now, or should we wait until
Well,
February?
as long as you're a waterer, summer is, everyone's afraid of summertime,
Yeah.
but summer's okay because if you plant them now, we still have months before the cold weather where plants root out,
Gotcha.
which makes them stronger and tougher for the winter months.
Good to have you back.
Thank you.
When I see a deer, I think it's a great moment. I talk to them. I love to see deer. I want them to come up and I just want to feed them. Chris is here because that's not the case with everybody.
Well, they're not in your yard, that is why.
Yeah, I see.
Now, you got to live with wildlife. I do believe that. But there's ways to dare-proof your property. And the #1 way to dare-proof your property is actually a dog. If you let your dog out and it urinates in your yard, believe it or not, deer sense that and they'll move to the neighbor's house and usually avoid your home.
Wow, I've heard that that's how deer cope, is through the scent.
Through the scent. And so there's, of course, there's invisible fence, which actually simulates coyote urine. So when they smell it, they actually think coyotes are out and about, which of course prey on deer, and they go on to the next yard.
How do you get
I
this?
don't ask
Let's
questions.
don't go there.
Now, it does smell when you spray it, but it dries clear and the scent goes when it dries. So it's not too bad for you. But sometimes you need a little bit more. So we make what we call dare cages. For example, on my farm, I have tree saplings. Now, once they get a certain age, the deer won't bother them. But right now, they love the small, tender growth. So I had to make cages around each and every one of them so the deer can't reach in and eat the foliage until they get tall enough that they can survive on their own.
And deer are not like squirrels who can always find a way to get around everything you protect. Deer can't get through this.
If it's hard, now their tongues can get through that. So I'm going to show you how you make it. First, you need like 14 gauge fence wire. Now, I like 48 inches high because if it's too shallow, what they do, they can go over and go straight,
14 gauge, 48 inches high.
14 gauge. Okay, so what I did is I'm going to bring this out. I already cut it with a wire cutter. And here's the thing about making a deer cage. It has to be wide enough because if it's small, they can go through here with their tongues and still get to the foliage. So you want it to be much wider than the plant. At least 24 inches is how I do it. Now, I already rolled out a roll and I cut it. If you see, when I cut it like this. We do that because we want to leave this much length, because we're going to see how we do. We take it and then we take that length and we fold it.
Look at you.
See? And you just go all the way down.
How did you discover this?
I actually figure this out on my own.
Really?
Because it was out of necessity.
Are you on YouTube showing this stuff?
Well, that's why we're here today.
Oh,
we're
that's
doing
right.
it.
Okay.
Anyhow, you go all the way down and then you place it over your tree, and then, let me get them. Then you want wood stakes, and you can buy these at any of your lumber yards. And you go inside, and you want 3. So you hammer it down at a slight
into the
angle.
ground.
Yep, and I push it a little bit that way because you want it to stretch out the cage. And then we do the other one like this. And if you do 3 of them, that keeps it in place during windstorms. And if deer kind of bounce against it, what happens is the deer it's too much work for them. They'll move on to something else. Now, sometimes as your plant gets bigger in here, you might need to double cage it to keep them even farther away from it. Now, once the tree gets this tall, usually the deer will only eat the bottom growth, not the top growth.